She vanished without a trace after catching the billionaire CEO with her bridesmaid. He spent 7 years searching but found her too late. The champagne glass trembled in his hand. 7 years. 7 years of searching, of hiring private investigators who came back empty-handed, of following every lead that dissolved into nothing. 7 years of wondering if she was alive, if she was happy, if she ever thought about what they could have been. And here she was, standing across the Plaza Hotel ballroom in a black Dior gown that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Her hair was different. Shorter. Cut into a sharp bob that framed her face with the kind of precision that spoke of expensive salons and absolute confidence. Everything about her screamed power. Success. Untouchable elegance. And on her left hand, catching the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead, an emerald engagement ring that seemed to mock every promise he had ever made. Damien Castellan set down his champagne glass before he dropped it. His date said something. He did not hear it. Did not care. Nothing mattered except crossing this ballroom. Except reaching her. Except saying her name one more time and hearing her say his. He walked. Left his date standing alone mid-sentence without explanation or apology. The crowd parted. People noticed. He did not care about that either. Celeste. She turned at the sound of her name. Slowly. Deliberately. Like she had all the time in the world and his desperation meant nothing. Their eyes met across 10 feet of polished marble floor. And for one impossible, heart-stopping second, he saw recognition flash across her face before her expression smoothed into something worse than anger. Polite confusion. The look you gave a stranger who had gotten too close at a cocktail party. My God. His voice cracked despite his best efforts to control it. It is really you. I cannot believe it is really you. The woman who had vanished from their wedding 7 years ago, who had disappeared like smoke leaving only questions and regret, looked at him with the kind of cool distance usually reserved for strangers asking for directions. I am sorry. Her voice was silk over steel. Smooth and expensive and completely impenetrable. I think you have me confused with someone else. My name is Celeste Beaumont. The denial hit him harder than rage would have. Harder than tears or accusations or any of the confrontations he had imagined during 7 years of searching. She was not just rejecting him. She was erasing him. Rewriting history. Pretending they had never existed at all. Please. The word escaped his throat before he could stop it. Before pride or dignity or any shred of self-preservation could intervene. I have been looking for you for 7 years. 7 years, Celeste. You just vanished. No note, no explanation, just gone like you never existed. Do you have any idea what that did to me? A man stepped forward then. Tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair graying at the temples in a way that somehow made him look more distinguished rather than old. He wore his wealth the way some men wore cologne. Subtly. Confidently. His hand settled on the small of Celeste's back with the casual possessiveness of someone who had every right to touch her. I believe my fiancée has made it clear she does not know you. The man's voice carried the kind of authority that came from generations of wealth and absolute certainty of his place in the world. Perhaps you should return to your date, Mr. Castellan. The way he said the name. Like Damien was nobody. Like 7 years ago did not matter. Like the woman standing beside him had never been Damien's at all. Fiancé. The word hit like a physical blow. Knocked the air from his lungs. Made the ballroom tilt. You are engaged. Damien said it like he was confirming his own death sentence. Celeste's smile could have frozen the champagne in his abandoned glass. Yes. We are getting married in Provence this summer. Small ceremony. Intimate. Just family and close friends who actually matter. The emphasis on close friends was deliberate. Surgical. A knife slipped between his ribs with the precision of someone who knew exactly where to cut. "Celeste, please." Damien was begging now, and he did not care who heard. Did not care that people were starting to notice. Starting to turn and whisper and watch this scene unfold. "Just 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes to explain." Explain what? And there it was. The fire he remembered. The passion that had made him fall for her before he convinced himself she was just a business opportunity. Before he destroyed everything. "Explain how you were sleeping with my maid of honor on the day of our wedding. Explain how our entire relationship was a business strategy to access Fontaine Industries. Explain how I was what you needed while Sienna was what you wanted." The color drained from his face. The ballroom seemed to stop breathing. Everyone within earshot was listening now. Watching Damien Castellan's past catch up with him in the worst possible way. "You heard." The words barely made it past his throat. Every single word. Her voice dropped. Became quiet. Deadly. "Right before I was supposed to walk down the aisle to you. So yes, Mr. Castellan, I vanished. Because the alternative was standing in front of 300 people and marrying a man who had been using me like a chess piece in his business strategy. I chose myself instead. Best decision I ever made. Have you ever discovered the person you loved most in the world was using you? Have you ever had to choose between your dignity and facing hundreds of people waiting for a wedding that should never happen? What would you do if you overheard your fiancé call you a business transaction just minutes before you were supposed to pledge your life to him? If you have ever had to walk away from someone who did not deserve you, this story is going to hit different. Hit that subscribe button because you absolutely need to hear how this plays out. And drop a comment right now. Have you ever had to disappear from your own life to save yourself? Let me know. This is the story of how Celeste Fontaine vanished without a trace after catching her billionaire fiancé with her best friend. How she rebuilt herself into something even more powerful than before. And how when he finally found her 7 years later, she was engaged to a man who made his wealth look like pocket change and looked at him like he was absolutely nothing. This is the story of a woman who chose herself over humiliation. And made him regret it for every single day of the rest of his life. 20 minutes before forever ended before it began. Celeste Fontaine stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Meridian Hotel, studying her reflection with the kind of critical eye that came from a lifetime of trying to measure up. The Vera Wang gown had taken 8 months to create. 8 months of fittings and adjustments and consultations with a designer who treated wedding dresses like sacred art. Silk and lace flowed over her body with the precision that only came from astronomical expense and obsessive attention to detail. Diamond pins held her dark hair in an elegant updo that had taken her stylist 3 hours to perfect. Her grandmother's veil, yellowed slightly with age but still beautiful, cascaded down her back. 3 generations of brides had worn this veil. Her grandmother. Her mother. Now her. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. Like every dream she had harbored since she was 7 years old watching her parents dance at a cousin's wedding. She felt like she was about to be sick. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the ceremony space 5 floors below. 300 guests filled white chairs arranged in perfect rows on the hotel's terrace garden. White roses and peonies decorated every available surface. The scent probably filled the air down there. Sweet and overwhelming and romantic. The string quartet was warming up. She could hear the faint strains of music drifting up even to this height. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline glittered in the May afternoon sun like a promise of the sophisticated life that awaited her as Mrs. Damien Castellan. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as she had planned and dreamed and hoped for 2 solid years. So why did her stomach feel like it was trying to crawl out of her body? Why did her hands shake when she reached for her bouquet of white roses? Why did everything feel wrong when it should feel so completely right? Wedding day nerves. That is what everyone said. Every bride feels anxious. Every woman questions everything right before she walks down that aisle. It is completely normal. Except this did not feel normal. This felt like a warning. Her phone buzzed on the antique vanity. A text from Sienna Trace. Her maid of honor. Her best friend since their sophomore year at Columbia, when they had been randomly assigned as roommates and somehow clicked despite coming from completely different worlds. Getting champagne for the suite. Be right back. You are going to be the most beautiful bride ever. I am so happy for you, babe. Celeste smiled despite the knot in her stomach that seemed to tighten with every breath. Sienna had been her rock through this entire wedding planning process. When Damien's mother, the formidable Catherine Castellan of the Park Avenue Castellans, had tried to take over every single decision from flowers to the guest list, Sienna had helped Celeste stand her ground. When the stress of merging two very different lives had felt overwhelming, when Celeste felt like she was drowning in decisions about china patterns and seating arrangements, Sienna had reminded her why she was doing this. Because Damien Castellan had chosen her. Damien Castellan. Billionaire CEO of Castellan Holdings. Heir to a commercial real estate empire worth billions. A man who moved in circles where people casually dropped millions on art and owned homes in 6 countries and thought nothing of flying to Paris for dinner. A man who could have had absolutely anyone. Models who graced magazine covers. Heiresses who had been groomed from birth to be perfect society wives. Women who fit seamlessly into his world of private jets and charity galas and old money connections that opened every door. But he had chosen Celeste Fontaine. The orphan daughter of hotel magnates who had died in a plane crash when she was 16. The girl who had inherited a struggling company at 25 and was working herself into the ground trying to save it. The woman who bought her professional wardrobe at sample sales and thought a weekend in the Hamptons was the height of luxury. He had chosen her. That had to mean something. That had to mean he saw past the differences in their backgrounds and loved her for who she actually was. Did it not? Celeste touched the sapphire pendant at her throat. Damien had given it to her the night he proposed. 2 years ago at a charity auction at the Met. She had been there representing Fontaine Industries, trying desperately to network, to make connections that might help save the company her parents had built. Damien had bid $250,000 on a weekend at a Fontaine property in the Hamptons. Then after the auction, he had found her near the coat check. I did not buy that weekend for the hotel. His smile had been devastating. Absolutely devastating. I bought it for an excuse to talk to the woman who runs Fontaine Industries. That was how it started. Dinner at a restaurant where the waiters knew his name and the wine list had bottles that cost more than her monthly salary. Then another dinner. Then weekends in the Hamptons that turned into long weekends in Paris. He had pursued her with the kind of single-minded focus that felt intoxicating. Flowers delivered to her office with notes that showed he was paying attention to things she said. Thoughtful gifts that demonstrated he cared. Introducing her to his world of influence and power like she belonged there. 6 months later, he proposed on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Celeste Fontaine, I love you. You are real in a world of artificial people. You are brilliant and beautiful and you make me want to be a better man. Marry me. She had said yes without hesitation. Because despite the difference in their backgrounds, despite his mother's obvious reservations, despite the whispers from his society friends about the orphan girl who landed a billionaire, Damien had made her feel chosen. In 20 minutes, it would all be real. Legal. Permanent. Celeste realized she had left her grandmother's bracelet somewhere. Something borrowed. The tradition mattered. Her grandmother had worn it. Her mother had worn it. She could not walk down that aisle without it. She gathered her skirts carefully and stepped into the hallway. Her heels clicked on the marble floors that were probably original to this historic hotel. The Grand Meridian was beautiful. All cream-colored walls and gilded sconces and elegant archways that whispered of old New York elegance. But it was also a maze. Every hallway looked identical. Cream walls. Gold sconces. Patterned carpet that probably cost a fortune. She turned left instead of right and found herself in an unfamiliar corridor. She was about to turn back, retrace her steps, when she heard voices. Low and intimate and coming from a room with a door that stood slightly ajar. A private lounge. According to the small gold placard mounted beside the door, it was reserved specifically for the Castellan wedding party. Celeste's hand went to her chest. Her heart hammered against her ribs for reasons she did not yet understand. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. To go find her bracelet and get back to the bridal suite where Sienna would be waiting with champagne and reassurance. But something made her stop. Some instinct she would later recognize as her subconscious trying desperately to save her. "We should get back." A woman's voice. Breathless. Familiar in a way that made Celeste's blood run suddenly cold. "Someone will notice we are both missing." "Not yet." A man's voice. Deep. Unmistakable even through the door. Damien. Her Damien. Her fiancé who should be downstairs with his groomsmen making last-minute adjustments to his tie and joking about cold feet. "Someone will notice we are both missing." The woman repeated. "Your mother already looks suspicious. Let them notice." Damien's voice held that rough edge Celeste had only heard in their most private, intimate moments. "This is the last time I will have you like this. Once I am married, we will have to be more careful. More discreet." The world tilted violently. Celeste's hand found the wall, gripping the silk wallpaper as her knees threatened to buckle completely. This was not real. This was a nightmare. A stress-induced hallucination. She would wake up any second in the bridal suite with Sienna laughing about wedding day anxiety. But she did not wake up. Because this was not a dream. "You are really going through with it." The woman's voice held something between sadness and resignation and something else Celeste could not quite identify. "Marrying her. You know I have to." Damien replied, and Celeste could hear him moving around. Could imagine him pacing the way he always did when he was working through a difficult business problem. "The merger with Fontaine Industries depends on it. My father made that abundantly clear. Marry Celeste, secure the partnership, get access to their European properties, expand into those markets. It is business, Sienna. You have always understood that about me. You have always understood the difference between business and pleasure. Sienna." The name hit Celeste like a physical blow. Like someone had reached into her chest and torn out her heart with bare hands. Her best friend. Her maid of honor. The woman who had helped her choose this very dress. Who had held her hand through every agonizing decision. Who had listened to her cry happy tears about finding true love against all odds. "And what are we?" Sienna asked, and Celeste could hear tears threatening in her voice. "What have we been for the past year?" "A year." The word echoed in Celeste's mind like a death knell. A year. They had been together for a year. An entire year. The whole time Celeste had been planning this wedding. Choosing between roses and peonies. Tasting 7 different cakes before finding the perfect one. Agonizing over the seating chart. Selecting the exact right song for their first dance. Dreaming about their future together. Damien had been sleeping with her best friend. "You are what I want." Damien said it simply. Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like it was reasonable and logical and nothing to be ashamed of. "She is what I need." "There is a difference, darling. Surely you understand that." Celeste pressed both hands against her stomach. Against the silk and lace of her wedding gown that suddenly felt like it was suffocating her. She felt like she was falling. Like the marble floor beneath her expensive shoes had simply disappeared and she was plummeting into darkness. "I love you," Sienna whispered. "You know I love you." "I know." Damien's voice softened in a way that made something crack open inside Celeste's chest. "And when this is all secure, when the merger is complete and we have established ourselves in the European markets and the business is stable, we will figure something out. You will always be in my life, Sienna. Always. She is just the acceptable face for my family. For the board. For the business connections. You are my real partner in every way that matters. The merger with Fontaine Industries. The words circled in Celeste's mind like vultures. She thought about the timing. About how she had inherited controlling shares of Fontaine Industries exactly 2 years ago when she turned 25. The struggling hotel company her uncle Philippe had been managing in trust since her parents died. The company that was hemorrhaging money and desperately needed a partnership to survive. And 2 months after she inherited those shares, Damien Castellan had bid $250,000 for an excuse to talk to her. She had thought it was fate. Thought the universe was finally giving her something good after years of loss and grief and struggling to keep her parents' legacy alive. But it had been strategy. Cold, calculated business strategy. He had never loved her. He had loved what she could give him. Access to Fontaine Industries' valuable European properties. The prestige of the Fontaine name in hotel circles. A business opportunity wrapped in romance and proposals on Mediterranean yachts. Though I will admit. Damien's voice pulled her back from the spiral of her thoughts. I will have to hit the gym pretty hard after we are done. I have gotten far too comfortable with her cooking and her Italian grandmother's recipes. Another few months of married life and I will need an entirely new wardrobe. The laughter that followed was ugly. Knowing. Cruel in its casual dismissal of her. The sound of people who had always had everything treating other people like accessories to be used and discarded when they no longer served a purpose. Celeste turned and ran. Her heels caught on the marble floor. She kicked them off mid-stride, not caring where they landed. Gathered her skirts in both hands. The train of her grandmother's veil dragged behind her. Behind her, 300 guests were waiting. The string quartet was probably playing her entrance music right now. People were standing. Turning to look toward the doors where the bride should be appearing. But Celeste Fontaine was not going to walk down that aisle. She burst into the bridal suite and slammed the door behind her, engaging the lock with shaking hands. Her breath came in gasps. Her vision blurred. But her mind was crystalline clear with the kind of clarity that only came from pure survival instinct. She grabbed her phone. Her purse. Her passport from the room safe where she had stored it for their honeymoon to Santorini that would now never happen. She yanked the diamond pins from her hair and let it fall around her shoulders. The veil came off. Carefully. Because even in her panic, even in her devastation, it was her grandmother's. The gown she would have to keep on for now. No time to change. No time for anything except escape. She grabbed her emergency bag. The one every bride was told to pack with makeup touch-ups and safety pins and a sewing kit for last-minute disasters. She dumped out the contents without ceremony. Shoved in her phone, wallet, and passport. Then she made 3 calls that would change everything. First call. Her lawyer Frederick Morrison, who had handled her parents' estate. Frederick, it is Celeste. Her voice was surprisingly steady. I need you to block the Castellan merger immediately. Use whatever clause you can find in our preliminary agreements. Breach of contract. Personal reasons. Material change in circumstances. I do not care what excuse you use. Just kill it. Kill it now. Celeste, the wedding is in 15 minutes, what? There is no wedding. Kill the merger. Do it now before I get on a plane. She hung up before he could ask questions she did not have time to answer. Second call. To her uncle Philippe in Paris. The brother of her dead father who had been more parent than uncle since she was 16. Uncle, I need you to trust me right now. Her voice cracked slightly but held. I am leaving New York today. This minute. I will explain everything later, but I need you to make sure no one can track me. Not through credit cards, not through the company, not through anything. Can you do that? Ma chérie, what has happened? Are you hurt? His voice was heavy with concern and thick with the French accent that always got stronger when he was emotional. I will tell you everything when I see you. I promise. But right now I need to disappear. And Philippe, this is important. If Damien Castellan tries to find me, if he calls you or contacts you or sends people asking questions, you never heard from me. You have no idea where I am. Promise me. A long pause. She could imagine him in his Paris apartment overlooking the Seine, trying to process this impossible request from his niece who should be getting married in 10 minutes. Je promets. I promise you, ma chérie. You have my word. Third call. To the hotel front desk. This is Celeste Fontaine in Bridal Suite 1214. I need a car brought to the service entrance in exactly 5 minutes. Not the main entrance where the wedding guests are. The service entrance in the back. Charge it to my personal account, not to the wedding. Miss Fontaine, is everything all right? Should I? 5 minutes. Service entrance. Thank you for your discretion. She hung up before the questions could start. One last look in the full-length mirror. The bride staring back at her was a stranger. Someone who had believed in fairy tales. Someone who had thought a billionaire could love her for herself. That woman was about to die. Celeste grabbed the long coat from the closet. Designer. Black. She had planned to wear it over her gown for the departure to their honeymoon. Now it would serve a different purpose entirely. She wrapped it around herself, covering as much of the wedding gown as possible. She could not do anything about the elaborate train, but the coat hid the worst of the silk and lace and diamond beading. She looked insane. She did not care. She slipped into the hallway. Took the service stairs instead of the main elevator where she might run into guests or wedding party members. Her bare feet were blessedly silent on the concrete steps. 5 floors down. 4. 3. 2. 1. The service entrance was empty except for a black town car idling at the curb exactly as requested. The driver stood beside it looking professional and incurious. Miss Fontaine. JFK Airport. International Terminal. As fast as traffic allows. Right away, miss. As the car pulled away from the Grand Meridian Hotel, Celeste allowed herself one look back. She could see the ceremony space from this angle. The terrace garden where 300 guests sat in white chairs. They were starting to look around now. Confused. Restless. Checking their watches. The string quartet had stopped playing. Any minute now, someone would check the bridal suite. They would find it empty except for discarded emergency bag contents and her shoes kicked off in the hallway. Damien would realize something was catastrophically wrong. Let him realize. Let them all realize. Let them try to explain to 300 witnesses why the bride had vanished like smoke. Celeste Fontaine was done. Done being anyone's business transaction. Done being what someone needed while they kept what they wanted on the side. She was choosing herself. Finally. Completely. The Paris flight left 90 minutes later. First class. One-way ticket. Booked under her mother's maiden name that she barely remembered from old documents. Beaumont. Celeste Fontaine was about to cease existing. She sat in seat 2A in her Vera Wang wedding gown covered by an oversized airport hoodie she had bought in a terminal shop for $40. She looked absolutely insane. She felt gloriously free. Her phone had exploded with calls and texts before she boarded. She watched them come in like an observer watching someone else's life fall apart. Damien, where are you? Everyone is waiting. Damien, Celeste, this is not funny. The ceremony should have started 30 minutes ago. Damien, what the hell is going on? Sienna, Babe, where are you? I am freaking out. Everyone is asking me questions. Damien, your lawyer just called my father and killed our merger. What did you do? What did you do? Damien, call me now. She turned off her phone before boarding. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them try to explain to 300 confused guests why there would be no wedding. No reception. No happily ever after. She was done explaining herself to people who had never valued her in the first place. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, as champagne bubbles dissolved on her tongue and the wedding gown rustled beneath her borrowed hoodie and the flight attendant gave her increasingly concerned looks, Celeste Fontaine made herself a promise. She would never be that naive again. Never trust that easily. Never believe that someone could love her without an agenda hidden beneath the pretty words. And she would make absolutely certain that Damien Castellan regretted every single lie he had ever told her. Not through confrontation. Not through some dramatic revenge plot. But by becoming so successful, so powerful, so completely and utterly beyond his reach that he would spend the rest of his life knowing exactly what he had lost. Now here is where 7 years of transformation begins. If you are invested in this story, hit that like button right now. And I want to know, would you have vanished like Celeste or confronted him at the altar in front of everyone? Comment below because I read every single one. Paris embraced her like a city welcoming a refugee. Uncle Philippe met her at Charles de Gaulle Airport. His expression cycled through shock, confusion, and protective fury when he saw her emerge from customs in a wedding gown and airport hoodie, carrying nothing but a small purse. They did not speak until they were in his car. Then Celeste told him everything in a voice that shook only slightly. The conversation she had overheard. Damien and Sienna. The affair that had lasted a year. The merger that had been the real goal all along. Her decision to run rather than become Mrs. Damien Castellan. Philippe listened in absolute silence until she finished. Then he pulled the car over to the side of the road and wrapped her in a hug that smelled like expensive cologne and the pipe tobacco he pretended he had quit. You are your mother's daughter. His voice was rough with emotion. Fierce and brave and far too intelligent to be anyone's fool. We will make sure he never finds you, ma chérie. And we will make sure Fontaine Industries becomes something he can never touch. I promise you this. Over the next 7 days, while Damien Castellan frantically searched for his missing bride and tried to salvage his reputation, Celeste Fontaine legally ceased to exist. She became Celeste Beaumont. Her mother's maiden name. New passport with new photo showing her shorter hair and different style. New business identity. New company registration. Philippe helped her build a wall between her past and present that no private investigator could possibly penetrate. Damien tried. She knew because Philippe told her about the investigators who came asking questions. About the increasingly desperate phone calls from Damien himself. About the attempts to trace her through credit cards and company records and old college friends. But Celeste Fontaine had vanished like she never existed. And Celeste Beaumont had absolutely no interest in being found. She threw herself into Fontaine Industries with the kind of single-minded focus that came from having nothing left to lose. She moved to Paris permanently. Took a modest apartment in the Marais while she learned her family's business from the ground up. The luxury hotel chain her parents had built before their deaths was struggling badly. Outdated properties that had not been renovated in decades. Declining bookings from younger travelers who wanted modern amenities. Brutal competition from hip new brands. She could see now why Damien had wanted access to it so badly. The Fontaine name still carried prestige in Europe. The properties, even struggling, sat on valuable real estate. A partnership with Castellan Holdings could have revitalized both companies and made them both even wealthier. But that partnership was dead. Killed by her phone call from a bridal suite. And Celeste was viciously glad. She spent 18 months learning absolutely everything. How to read profit and loss statements. How to negotiate with hospitality unions. How to spot trends in the industry before they became mainstream. She visited every single Fontaine property. Talked to every manager. Listened carefully to what employees said when they thought the boss was not paying attention. Then she started making changes. Radical changes that made industry insiders shake their heads and predict disaster. She sold off the underperforming properties without sentiment. Took the capital and renovated the crown jewels of the collection with a ruthless eye toward modern luxury that still honored the elegant Fontaine aesthetic. She rebranded entirely. New logo. New marketing. Targeting younger affluent travelers while maintaining the sophistication that had always been Fontaine's signature. She expanded beyond traditional hotels in ways that shocked the industry. Luxury wellness retreats in Bali. Exclusive eco-tourism properties in Costa Rica. Boutique hotels in unexpected locations that became destinations in themselves. She opened art galleries in 6 countries, combining her personal passion with shrewd business sense about wealthy travelers who wanted cultural experiences. The transformation was not immediate. For the first 2 years, revenues actually declined as she repositioned the brand. Industry critics said she was destroying her family's legacy. Insiders predicted Fontaine Industries would be bankrupt within 5 years. Trade publications ran articles questioning whether a 27-year-old with an MBA but no real experience should be running a company. But Celeste had learned something valuable from her humiliation at the Grand Meridian Hotel. She had absolutely nothing to prove to anyone except herself. By year 3, Fontaine Industries was profitable again. By year 5, it had tripled in size. Forbes magazine featured her on their 30 under 30 list with a photo of her looking powerful and confident in front of a Paris Fontaine property. 2 years later, she made their most powerful women in business issue. She cut her hair into the sharp bob that became her signature. Built a wardrobe of power suits and designer gowns that commanded respect in boardrooms and charity galas alike. She sat on the boards of 3 international charities. Became someone whose opinion mattered, whose business acumen was respected, whose personal life remained mysteriously and deliberately private. She became Celeste Beaumont, powerhouse CEO. And Celeste Fontaine, the naive girl who believed in fairy tale romance, remained buried in a past she had no interest whatsoever in resurrecting. Meanwhile, 7 years passed for Damien Castellan like a slow torture. His wedding day had become the nightmare that never ended. The bride who vanished. The 300 guests who had to be told there would be no ceremony, no reception, please accept our profound apologies and enjoy the open bar. The merger that collapsed when Frederick Morrison delivered the news that Miss Fontaine was permanently blocking the partnership. His relationship with Sienna had ended that same day. When the truth about their affair emerged, when people started putting pieces together and whispering, she had become persona non grata in the social circles she had always aspired to join. She left New York within a month. Last Damien heard, she was working for a boutique hotel chain in Miami under her maiden name, trying desperately to escape the scandal that followed her. Damien's own reputation had taken a hit. Not enough to destroy his business. He was still a billionaire. Still CEO of Castellan Holdings. Still sat on powerful boards and commanded respect in commercial real estate. But there were whispers. Knowing looks. Questions about why Celeste Fontaine had run. Some people knew about Sienna. Others suspected the relationship had been motivated by business rather than love. The Castellan name no longer meant just wealth and power. Now it carried undertones of scandal. Of a man who had lost something precious through his own arrogant choices. His father had never looked at him quite the same way after that day. Catherine Castellan had made her disappointment abundantly clear in the cold, cutting way that only old money matriarchs could perfect. But worse than all of that was the empty space Celeste had left behind. Every woman he dated was compared to her and found wanting. Every business success felt hollow because he had sacrificed something irreplaceable to achieve it. Every night alone in his penthouse he wondered where she was. If she was safe. If she hated him. If she had moved on. He spent 7 years looking for her. Hired the best investigators money could buy. They found nothing. Celeste Fontaine had simply vanished like she never existed. And then, on a May evening exactly 7 years after she disappeared, he found her. The man who changed everything for Celeste was Julian Hawthorne. She met him 18 months before the Plaza Hotel Gala. At a contemporary art gallery opening in London. She had flown in from Paris to see a collection by an artist she admired. The gallery was crowded with the kind of people who appreciated art but also understood it as investment. She was studying a particularly striking abstract piece when a voice beside her said, "The brushwork is extraordinary. But I actually prefer the piece in the corner. The one everyone is ignoring." Celeste looked at the man who had spoken. Tall, maybe 6'2". Dark hair with just enough silver at the temples to suggest his mid-30s. Impeccably tailored suit that whispered Savile Row. But it was his eyes that struck her. Kind eyes that actually looked at her face instead of cataloging her worth. "That one is my favorite too," she replied carefully. "Everyone is drawn to the big, loud pieces. But that one requires you to slow down. To actually look." "Exactly." His smile was genuine. Warm without being predatory. "I am Julian Hawthorne. Celeste Beaumont." They talked for over an hour. About art, about the strange social dance of gallery openings where half the attendees were there for the champagne rather than the paintings. She learned that Julian ran a tech company specializing in sustainable energy and artificial intelligence. When she admitted she did not fully understand the technical details, he seemed to appreciate her honesty rather than expect her to pretend. When the opening ended, he asked for her number. She hesitated, old wounds making her intensely cautious. She gave him her number anyway. Something about Julian felt different. Safe. He called 2 days later. Asked her to dinner. She said no. Too soon. Too risky. Her walls were too high and she had no interest in lowering them. He did not push. Did not pressure. Just said, "When you are ready, I will be here." It took 2 full years. 2 years of him showing up at charity events she attended. Sending thoughtful gifts that showed he paid attention. Not flowers or jewelry that could be transactional. But books about artists she might enjoy. Tickets to gallery openings. Donations made in her name to causes she supported publicly. Never pushy. Never demanding. Never making her feel like she owed him anything. Just consistently, patiently present. Finally, she agreed to dinner. One dinner in Paris at a small bistro that had nothing to do with business or networking or maintaining appearances. That dinner turned into another. And slowly, carefully, like someone coaxing a wounded animal, Celeste let her walls start to come down. Julian was different from Damien in every way that actually mattered. He had built his own tech empire, Hawthorne Industries, which was valued at 3 times what Castellan Holdings was worth. He came from old money but had made new money through innovation and intelligence rather than just managing inherited wealth. He did not need Fontaine Industries. Did not need her European connections or her properties or the prestige of her family name. He just needed her. Wanted her. Chose her. 6 months into their relationship, Celeste tested him. "I do not need you to save me." She said it bluntly over dinner in her Paris apartment. "I do not need rescuing or protecting or anyone to complete me. I am whole exactly as I am. I know." Julian pulled her close, kissed her forehead with a tenderness that made her throat tight. "That is exactly why I love you. You were already complete when I met you. I just want to stand beside you. If you will let me." That was the moment she knew she was in love. Really, genuinely in love. Not the fantasy she had built with Damien based on what she desperately wanted to believe. But something real and solid and safe. Julian proposed 6 months later on the terrace of her villa in Provence. Sunset painted the lavender fields in impossible shades of gold and purple. He held out a ring. Emerald, because he somehow knew it was her favorite stone. Not a diamond. Not traditional. Just perfectly, uniquely her. "I do not need you," he said, kneeling in front of her with absolute sincerity. "I want you. Every single day. For the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" "Yes." She did not hesitate. Did not second guess. Did not wait for the other shoe to drop. Yes. They planned a small wedding. 50 guests. People who actually mattered rather than society obligation invitations. Her villa in Provence. No 300 strangers watching. No performance. Just love and commitment and truth. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months after the Plaza Hotel Gala. The gala Celeste had to attend because it honored her parents' memory through the Aviation Safety Foundation they had supported before their plane went down. She could not skip it. Could not send a representative. This was about Philippe and Celeste Fontaine and the legacy they had left. Julian offered to accompany her. "New York is your past. But I will be there if you need me." She was grateful. Grateful for his steady presence. For the fact that he knew pieces of her story but never demanded every detail. She had told him about a broken engagement. About leaving New York. About rebuilding herself. He had listened without judgment. Without needing to know everything. She never imagined Damien Castellan would be at the gala. Why would he attend? He had no connection to aviation safety. No reason to be there. But Damien had been monitoring every mention of Celeste Beaumont for years. Waiting desperately for any opportunity. When he saw her name on the Plaza Hotel Gala attendee list, he bought an entire table. Brought a date he had no interest in. Showed up hoping for a miracle. He got devastation instead. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered with crystal and wealth and Manhattan power. Celeste stood beside Julian feeling both completely at ease and slightly on edge. This was her first time back in New York in 7 years. The city felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. She wore custom Dior. Black and sleek and powerful as armor. Her signature bob was perfect. Her grandmother's diamond earrings caught the light. And on her left hand, the emerald engagement ring sparkled like a promise of a future built on truth. "You are tense." Julian's hand was warm and steady on her back. "Want to leave? We can skip the speeches. Fly back to Paris tonight." "No." She shook her head. "This matters. My parents would want me here. Then I am exactly where I need to be." That was when she saw him across the ballroom. Damien Castellan. 7 years older. Still handsome but with something haunted lurking behind his eyes. He was with a woman Celeste did not recognize. Beautiful. Elegant. Looking thoroughly bored. Not Sienna, Celeste noted with detached satisfaction. Julian noticed her reaction instantly. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Not a ghost. Just a memory I thought I buried deeper." She tried to turn away. But Damien's restless gaze swept the ballroom and landed directly on her. Recognition hit him like a lightning strike. Face went white. Champagne glass trembled. He took a step forward. Then another. Moving toward her like a man possessed, leaving his date without a word of explanation. Celeste had a choice. She could leave through the side exit. Grab Julian's hand and disappear before this confrontation happened. But she had spent 7 years becoming someone who did not run from anything. So she stood her ground. Lifted her chin. Met Damien's eyes with the cool, untouchable composure of someone who had absolutely nothing to fear. And the confrontation that followed would define everything. The rest you already know. The denial. The begging. The revelation that she had heard everything 7 years ago. Julian's protective intervention. Her complete and utter rejection. I won, Damien. And you lost. That is the end of our story. She walked away from him that night. Julian beside her. Leaving Damien alone in the middle of the Plaza Hotel ballroom with 300 witnesses to his humiliation. In the car, she told Julian everything. He listened without judgment. Without demanding to know why she had not told him sooner. That is why you took so long to trust me. Yes. I am not him, Celeste. I never will be. I know. That is why I said yes when you proposed. 3 months later, they married at her villa in Provence. 50 guests who mattered. Uncle Philippe walked her down an aisle of lavender. Simple white gown with none of the Vera Wang drama. Julian's vows made her cry. I do not complete you. You were already whole. I just get to stand beside you every day. That is the greatest privilege I will ever have. Her vows made him smile. You taught me to trust again. You showed me love does not require sacrifice of yourself. I choose you. Forever. They danced under stars. Drank champagne that tasted like victory. Celebrated with people who loved them for who they were. And somewhere in New York, Damien saw the photos on social media. Saw Celeste glowing with genuine happiness. Saw the life she had built without him. He closed the app. Sat alone in his penthouse that suddenly felt impossibly empty. 7 years of searching. When he found her, it was too late. She had moved on completely. Built an empire. Found a man who valued her. His consequences had finally caught up. 5 years after the Plaza confrontation, Celeste Beaumont Hawthorne sat in her Paris office overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Photos on her desk showed 2 children. A daughter with Julian's eyes. A son with her smile. Fontaine Industries continued thriving. She sat on boards. Mentored young women. Built something meaningful. And she was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. She heard about Damien occasionally. Still successful financially. Never married. Known as the man who let Celeste Fontaine get away. She felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just distant recognition of a closed chapter. Sienna had disappeared. Last she heard, California. Different name. Karma delivered. Walking Paris streets with Julian, Celeste saw Damien's face on a magazine. Headline about uncertain future. Does it bother you? Julian asked. No. Completely true. He is a stranger who taught me a lesson. Nothing more. What lesson? That I deserve someone who chooses me every day. Julian stopped. Pulled her close. I choose you. Every day. Forever. That is why I am happy. Damien lived with regret. Watched her success from afar. Knew he destroyed the best thing in his life. But Celeste did not think about him. Did not waste energy on what could have been. The woman who vanished 7 years ago had been reborn into something unbreakable. She had won. Not by destroying him. But by becoming someone who did not need his downfall to feel victorious. Let me tell you what this teaches. Your worth is not determined by who wants you. Know the difference between being used and valued. The best revenge is becoming unreachable. Living well is ultimate payback. Closure is something you give yourself. She did not need his apology. Chose herself and moved forward. Walking away is not weakness. It is power. Second chances are for people who deserved first chances. To everyone betrayed, remember Celeste's story. Walking away is recognizing worth. Rebuilding is reclaiming power. Moving on is refusing to let the past define future. So here is my question, should Celeste have confronted Damien at the wedding? Or was disappearing the power move? Comment below. If this reminded you walking away is sometimes strongest choice, subscribe to Mr. Steven Stories. We tell stories about people who chose themselves and won. Like if you believe in cutting off people who showed true colors. Share with someone who needs to remember their worth. Remember, you are not defined by who left you. You are defined by the empire you built after. Celeste Fontaine vanished without trace. Celeste Beaumont rose from ashes. Some endings are not about reconciliation. They are about becoming so powerful their regret is inevitable. That is the real victory. I will see you in the next story. Stay powerful. Stay unbothered. Stay winning.